Hi, and hey, thanks for stopping by on Jody Bush's Community House. Today we have a real treat. A dear friend of mine and these three children I grew up with over a bunch of years. They're going to tell you about the stories that went on, and we just had so much fun and just doing different things in sports, and then in a band called Side Street. And they're going to talk about their mom too, because she was instrumental of holding the ship together. And I'm really happy to know that these three are here. And Dave will introduce himself first. Dave?
Hi, I'm Dave Guarilia.
Hi, I'm Marlene Guarilia.
Hi, I'm Mike Guarilia.
Okay. And somebody's phone's going on.
It's mine.
Don't worry about it. Okay. And this is one of the reasons. When you pull into Guarilia, what you will see is the sign says, home of Jean Guarilia, Boston Celtics, 1959, 1962-63 season. They'll talk more about that shortly. Right now, Dave, you going to start? Dave.
Sure. What am I going to start about?
What would you like to talk about first? How about when your folks were real young? I have a great picture here about them. What would you say? I have it looks like it's Michael, right, Mike?
Yeah.
I think it's you, your father.
Yeah, I can remember my mom always taking us for walks and taking just all the time. And she would push in the perambulator, she'd push David, and then eventually she was pushing Marlene. And I remember when the Guarilia, when the dam was, or the dike was being built back in '65. I remember my mom took us for walks around town. I remember walking around Old Forge when they first came back from the Celtics. And that's one of the things I remember when we were younger. And they always went out. We always had babysitters. And I remember my parents every weekend went out. And we had babysitters. And that's something that I remember that always stuck in my mind, is having these babysitters and my parents going out all the time.
And I think one time you started babysitting for me.
Yeah, later on I started babysitting for other people. Once I was old enough to watch my brother and sister, I babysat them. And then when they got old enough, I started babysitting for other people. And yes, your daughter was one of them when she was a year old. And then I think when your son Jody was born too.
Yeah. Marlene, what would you like to talk about with your folks?
Well, my parents always had a great sense of humor. We laughed at, I stayed at home with them. I took care of them when they were ill. But we laughed every day in the house. There was always humor in my house. A lot of good memories. A lot of fun times.
They were lucky. He had 2 registered nurses in the house. And you guys definitely did take care of your parents very well. You should be very proud of that. You want to talk about, let's talk about the nickname Pecos. What do you guys know about the nickname Pecos?
I think one of his uncles gave that to him
No,
when he was
actually,
really...
Onions.
Oh, was it?
Onions
A
from
friend,
the
okay.
guy that he grew up with, whose name was Onions, gave him the nickname Pecos.
Ah, okay.
They all had nicknames in Guarilia.
Yeah, there was Chaz and Boy and Fats.
Yep.
Yeah.
But a guy named Onions gave my father the Pecos, named after the Pesos kid.
Wow.
I remember my dad said that he was playing in Chicago with the Celtics and somebody yelled out, "Hey, Pecos," and he says he looked up after 3 rows, you couldn't see through the smoke, so he didn't know who it was. And then years later, a friend of his that he grew up with said, "Yeah, that was me. I was in the Navy. I came to see you play." So
That's cool. After the band Side Street, I'm going to just show a picture when we were all young and we were playing on, I don't know if it was Pittston or wherever the heck we were playing. But then your dad also went with the band he created called the Cadillacs. What can you tell me about the Cadillacs and where they played?
Well, I was in the Cadillacs. He asked me after, I think the Cadillacs were together for about a year, and he asked me to play guitar for him. And I was never a guitar player. I was always a bass player. So I really had to brush up on my guitar playing, and then I learned how to play guitar. And it was a trial by fire when I first started doing that. We played at Mac's Cafe in Old Forge, and it was like, it was a junky place, but they had good food, and we always had a great crowd there. And we played there all the time, almost every weekend for years. Place is no longer there. It burned down a few years back.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun playing there. And again, it was a trial by fire. So what I did was I would practice and practice and practice until I felt like I could hold my
I
own.
remember you turned into a good guitar player.
Yeah, I was able to hold my own after a while, but that was only through his encouragement and then also just learning from people and watching lots of videotapes of people showing how to, and that's how I kind of learned.
Who was in that band? I see the picture here.
We had Tony Alou,
right?
and Tony sang and played guitar.
Mike Emla was the drummer.
Mike Emla to start was the drummer.
Mike Haddock.
And Mike Haddock played guitar originally, and then Mike left, and my dad asked me to come in. Dave was it Grunman? Grunman. He was in the band also, and yeah, we were playing some pretty neat stuff. A little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll, and then Mike Emla ended up leaving, and we got Lenny, who was in Side Street with Dad, and Lenny Mesco that was so much fun. I love the song selection that Lenny would sing, and that my father and I would try things out on stage, and that was so much joy to play on stage with my dad with that band when Lenny was in the band.
And believe it or not,
and I'd finished up a gig. I was playing with the New York Times band at the time, and if I finished up with a job close by, I'd stop in and I'd end up playing. And it was just like, we're back in Side Street again.
Yeah.
It was just really a cool vibe.
Right, and eventually Mike Sprazza came into the band, and Mike was with Dad for a couple years, and there you were, all four members. Well, that was actually, Mike came in after Lenny had unfortunately passed away as a young guy, and Jimmy Musto came to play, and Jimmy was a fabulous drummer, and that was a lot of fun to play too.
He still is.
Yes, yes.
and believe it or not, I'm the one that actually named the band. That was my father's favorite car, and he actually was going to name them the Eldorados because that's the kind of car he had at the time. But there was a famous band called the Eldorados. They said, Dad, how about Cadillacs? So.
Yeah. And we played every week, and I have my dad's books where he would book jobs and he saved them, and he had the amounts that they would make for the job and where the jobs were, and they were filled weekend after weekend after weekend.
There I was taking my mother to go hear the band.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I had to leave the band because I was working every other weekend, and I couldn't keep a steady pace of playing because I had to work that every other weekend. So then they had another guitarist come in, and I missed playing. I did it for 10 years, and I loved it. But now I have my own band, so I'm happy with that too.
Tell us about your band now. What's going on with that?
Well, we're called Wits End, and it's I'm with three other guys that I grew up with, and we do classic rock. We have 4 singers, which is great, and we do a lot of harmonies, a lot of Eagles, and we do the Beatles and the Monkees and some Stones and some 80s. And we've been together for 11 years now, and we play once a month, and we just do it for the fun of it. We do practice every weekend or every week. We get together on Thursday nights, and we have about a 2.5 hour practice just to go over our set lists and everything to prepare for our jobs.
What kind of material?
Classic rock. Yeah, we're a cover band, but we like doing other people's songs, and we try to work out our harmonies. And we have 4 singers that have distinctive voices. They're all different from each other, and we blend pretty good with harmonies and stuff. So that's one of our strong points that we have.
I'm looking at a picture here of your parents when they were very young. They were very classy. Tell me about that feeling when you think about your parents as far as very classy. Your mother's dressed to the nines, and your father looks like a movie star.
I get so many compliments now about my father, and even back then, I remember friends coming over the house and saying, "Wow, Mike, your mom is amazing looking," and they always had some really nice comments and compliments about how my mom looked. And my dad was always a cool teacher. You know, he wore sunglasses when he played out, and when they went out, I could only imagine what they were like as a couple hitting a night on the town. And always well dressed. My dad always had wonderful clothing and stuff. And my mom was actually a model after she had me in Boston for a department store. She modeled for, I think, 1 or 2 years in Boston. And we have a couple photos in our photograph album where she was modeling. So yeah, she always stayed in good shape. And you know, I was lucky to have 2 great-looking parents.
There's guys in town that would drive around town, constantly drive around when my mother would be walking my brother and myself with the stroller, just to stare at my mother because of her beauty. I remember Tommy McAndrew told us that. We used to drive around town all the time.
I know
checking
your
your
mother and
mother
father really got along with my mother and father. When I had the bar with Victor Giuliano up at Lake Winona, Pleasant Manor. We just had they had such a good time. I have some pictures that were just like, it was a natural thing for them. They all, behaved the same way. They enjoyed a couple libations, and it was just wonderful times. I could definitely see it in my head very clearly. Let me ask one of you guys this question. Your father's best friend, besides Nipper, that was Gerard.
Okay.
What about those guys? What were those guys all about?
Well, Gerard was my father's first assistant coach for basketball, and he was the school psychologist. And then he eventually became the school superintendent. And we knew the family very well. We were always over their house. Marlene to this day is best friends with their daughter. And I worked for for Gerard, with the company that he started, Golden Care, which is still going on. And I worked with his daughter there and the son-in-law. And, we were, it was a nice little family company that was started back in 1986, I believe. And still going strong today. And that's what I do for a living, is home health. My mom and dad stayed in touch with them all the way until Gerard had passed away, I believe.
2011.
Yeah, a couple of years before my dad. And but they were friends for a long, long time.
I'm going to put up on the screen here a picture of Side Street. And it's me, Mike Sparazza, and your father. I think it was, I don't know if it was Rocky Glen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Rocky Glen. And that was like, all of a sudden we're getting into the big time. There's thousands of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
amazing. You guys remember much of that?
Yeah.
What do you got, Dave?
Going there and just like to find a parking spot and how packed it was when you guys played.
I remember all the places that you guys played were always packed.
Yeah.
And I remember when you first started at Fileski's or Drucker's, Fileski's, yeah. And I remember my dad always having a bass. And I remember looking at the bass and just admiring that shape, which is what I play now too. I play that same type of bass, the Fender Precision bass that he had. Actually, his first bass was a Fender Jazz bass that he got in 1962. He and my mom used to go to the jazz clubs, and they had mostly a black audience, black players, and my dad and mom would go there and they would listen to these bands. And then my dad got talking to the bass players, and my dad, for some reason, really picked out the bass. And the bass player said, "If you go get a bass, I'll show you how to play it." And that's how my dad got started. This would be about 1961, 62. And so my dad gets a 1962 Fender Jazz bass, which was absolutely gorgeous. And that's how he started playing. And his first band was the Heartbeats with George Morrow, Chicky Colarusso, and Bob O'Connell was in that band, and they were a cover band. And I remember him going to play. I was pretty young, but I do remember him going to some of those gigs. They mostly played at some of the colleges. I know they played at Princeton. I think that was one of the places.
Bucknell was another one.
Bucknell was another, and I think Scranton U. And then, of course, I believe they played up until '69, if I'm not mistaken. And then Side Street came in '74, I believe you guys started.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
About that time, I remember the phone call. I ran into your father. I was playing with Jay and the Corporation up in Braintree, past Tunkhannock, at a bar, and he comes over to me. He was about 6'8" at the time, you know. And I said, "Hey, you remember me?" And I'm looking at him going, "Jesus, what is this monster?" Well, and I'm pretty tall myself, but I remember him saying, "Yeah, I was that basketball player." I said, "Oh, you're that guy." And I said, "You know what? I didn't know you played." I said, "You were beating the hell out of me. I didn't have time to explain I play guitar."
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he sat around, listened to the band, he liked it, and then he said, "You know, someday you and I are going to be in a band together." And I'm going, "Okay, sure." Well, about 6 months goes by, and I get a phone call to report the Fileskis. That's why you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And the rest is, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
And it's just a wonderful history.
I remember early on my father said, "I wish I could play guitar like Jody could play." And Jody, I remember you saying, "I wish I could play basketball like your father played." That was one of the things that was happening at the time, because you were one of the most natural guitar players that we knew and ever saw.
We played together for a long time, and we never had an argument. We didn't have an argument about equipment or nothing. It was just a wonderful friendship. And that's why I'm so happy you guys could make it out here today to share some of your memories about everything about your parents. And this is off the cuff, by the way. You know, we're not really scripted. So for anybody watching, just understand we're having a casual conversation. And I think that's the most natural way to do it. We're not trying to, okay, 30 seconds to go, and you know, this is just about emotion. And when you start thinking about stuff, you go, "Oh yeah, I forgot this." So continue talking about stuff. I'm going to show a picture. This was right around the time of your father's passing. Your mother looked still gorgeous. Your father, big smile. I think it was in July. And there's Richie, Rock Street Richie, in this picture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, you can't beat these people. And Richie was like a little baby, and he fell in love with the music business because of Side Street. And now they're a big company. Rock Street is
Yeah. They do sound for a lot of pretty big acts coming into the area.
Absolutely, just unbelievable. He's to me, he's top notch, and the rest of the crew is just fantastic, and they're so accommodating, so helpful. Actually, helped me get some of the launching aspects of this whole procedure. And Billy was just going out with Lou Graham, from Foreigner. And then he gives me a call. "Jody, how can I help you?" I mean, like, these kind of people, what do you do? Rock Street is really just fantastic. And it's the people. And Mama G, I'm actually going to do a show on her. She's going to teach everybody how to do the polka. So you better stick around for that show. See where we go.
Wow. Well, this is a great opportunity. I always enjoy, with home health, I'm always running into patients that knew who my dad was or heard of him. And I'm always so happy to talk about my dad because I'm so proud of what he did. My dad always did everything well, but he put the time in. He put the time in shooting baskets, shooting darts, playing pool, playing bass. Always saw my dad practicing the bass. Yep. He was always prepared with his songs, and just everything he did well because he had this super confidence, but that was through practice and hard work, and that's how he got to where he got.
I also see 3 very successful, loving siblings that that you guys have been blessed, I would say.
We are very
tough in many angles. Many things happen out of our control, or we get out of control. But whatever it is, you guys are really successful. We'll be right back.